Is Final Fantasy XVI the next great evolution of the Final Fantasy series, or does it fall short, leaving behind too many core elements that we have known to enjoy and love in the Final Fantasy series? Let's talk about it. So there's a lot of controversy going around the internet right now amongst fans that, it's kind of split on. Some of them feel like it is not a Final Fantasy game. Some of the more traditional fans feel like there's been too much stripped away for it to be considered a Final Fantasy. And that is what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about Final Fantasy XVI, the good, the bad, and is it deserving of the Final Fantasy name? All right, we're going to jump in and we're going to start by talking about the story, the side quest, and the world map. Now, just a quick overview. This game takes place in the land of Valisthea. It's made up of 4 regions. You have Rosaria, Sambrek, Dalmacian Republic, and then you have the continent of Ash, or the kingdom of Waloed. The world is made up of essentially 3 types of people. People that cannot use magic, just regular people. They have to have a crystal to use magic, but then you have bears who have the ability to wield magic, but they were kind of looked on as undesirables. They're forced into slavery as small children. And that is a big story point of the game, is to try to free them and give everyone the opportunity to have their own choice and live life on their own terms as free people, which is, really cool. And then you have what are called dominants, and these are the people that have the ability to use the power of the Eikons. And the Eikons are this game's version of summons, which I will say right now, they've done that very, very well. It was my favorite part of the game by far. You play as Clive Rosfield, and you essentially start off the game on a quest of revenge to find the person who killed your brother. So that's kind of like the overview and how the game starts. As far as the story goes, it is very much a Final Fantasy story in my opinion. It feels very Square Enix. I really enjoyed it. I feel like, I'll say this, I enjoyed it for the most part. They hit their highs really well, but I will say when you hit a low, it was rock bottom and it was rough. The game revolved around the Eikons and those battles and the big story bits, which were absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, in between those, you had side quests that were absolutely horrendous. And obviously, they're side quests, so they're optional. But my first time through the game, I was trying to complete everything, so I did. I found myself just skipping dialogue. I was reading and hitting X as fast as I could because I wanted to get through it as fast as possible. They were not interesting in the least, in my opinion. And then to get to the next main story bit, you had essentially side quests masked as main quests. And that was another part that it was just really rough. It broke away from the immersion, and it threw the pacing of the game off, in my opinion, really, really bad. It was not fun. I think that is the one thing that most people, if not all, that have played this game can agree on, is that the side quests were easily the weakest point. It was rough. I can't sugarcoat it. In my opinion, they were terrible. But I understand you have to have some of those to get to the next point. It was just, you had such a high coming off like some of these iconic battles and some of these cutscenes, and then you just hit rock bottom with the side content and then the main story quest that you had to do next to lead up to your next big story moment. So overall, I think the story was good. I enjoyed it. It relied heavily on the big story moments and those iconic spectacle fights, the cinematic battles, which were absolutely phenomenal. I love them. They nailed that. But unfortunately, the lows were really bad. They were absolutely horrendous, in my opinion. Obviously, on any of this, comment down below. Let me know what you think. Did you have a better experience with those side quests and stuff than I did? I did try to read them to see if anything was interesting enough. Nothing ever caught my attention, so I was reading it and sped through. But
there goes your
main story beats, it was great. Other stuff, not so hot. Moving on to the world map of Final Fantasy XVI, the world of Valisthea. It's broke up into 4 regions, just like there are in the game, and essentially you can travel to an obelisk within those regions, and then you have that region to explore. And if you want to go to another region, you have to actually go back to the world map and then fast travel to the region. I didn't feel like the game was overly large. I also didn't feel like it was too small. Square Enix isn't exactly known for their level design, so It's not really a surprise. That is very much basic. But I'll say not all games have to have a massive open world nowadays to be good. Although Final Fantasy VII Rebirth would very much like it to have a massive open world. So there's that. But I think this game done fine. The only thing I will say, and this goes for games in general right now, is nowadays it's more of a extra content is a DLC thing. It's in the form of DLC. You have to purchase it, where back in the day, to get Knights of the Round material on Final Fantasy VII, you had to have a gold chocobo, and you had to go to that island and grab it. In Final Fantasy VIII, the Deep Sea Research Center, that was an optional area that you would have to find if you wanted to get Bahamut, and then also the Eden materia, or not materia, but the summon. You had to draw it from, I think it was Ultima Weapon, as a matter of fact. But there's not a lot of optional content in games nowadays. Even Final Fantasy VII Remake is at fault for this, because, in my opinion, after the plate fell and you go back to Sector 7, and then you have to go underneath Sector 7 and you see that whole like research lab or whatever that Shinra had, I wish so bad, and I've talked to multiple people about this, I wish that was optional content. Like, why are you forcing me to do this? Like, okay, put it in there. It's optional. If I want to go do it, great. If not, okay. Because odds are, I've already played through that game. I've seen that. Why would I want to necessarily experience that again on the next playthrough? Just let me go through the main story of it and move on. Also, the Hojo, at the end of it, that whole section you have to go through with him, I also wish that was optional. You know, there isn't any optional content in these games anymore, and with the way the level design and the map is, there's no secret areas to explore. So that's probably my only complaint as far as the world map goes. But Final Fantasy 16 is nowhere near the only game that is guilty of that. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the game nowadays, is extra content and side content comes in the form of DLC. So as far as the world and the map goes, it's cool. Not too big, not too small. It's fine. Didn't have to be open world. I thought it done its job just fine. Moving right along, let's talk about characters / party members. Starting off with characters, I feel like the majority, the majority of characters, if not all the actual main characters of the game, I feel like they were very well written. Dialogue with them was very good. There was more than one time, several times as a matter of fact, that I believe I was like, well said, Clive. The voice actors done a good job. The writing was good. I feel like as far as the characters go, no complaints. It was fantastic. Obviously, side quest dialogue and stuff, that stuff kind of sucked. But, I'm just focused on the main characters' dialogue and how they conveyed it, along our journey. And I feel like Square Enix done a very good job with that, and as did the voice actors. I thought Clive's voice actor done an amazing job. Josh was done a fantastic job. Jill's, and everyone loves Sid, obviously. That man's voice actor was absolutely amazing. So all the characters, for the most part, were very well written, very well spoken, done a great job. Jumping into the party member section. About halfway through the game, they kind of throw this tutorial message up to you. I don't know if it's a joke. I kind of took it as a joke. It was kind of ridiculous. But they throw a message up on the screen. It was a tutorial message, and it was like, just so you know, all the people that have been with you, throughout the main story, and they've been fighting alongside of you, those are your party members. To me, that's not very well received. Like I said, I took it as a joke. I think it was kind of ridiculous. There was no customization with them. It did not feel like they were an extension of my party. It felt like they were just kind of there. It didn't feel like they'd done a whole lot. Torgal obviously was fun to have, but anytime you had like Jill or Sid or any of the other characters in your party, Joshua, it just didn't feel like they'd done a whole lot, to be perfectly honest. So I thought that was kind of a joke almost whenever they said, they just let you know, just so you know, these people are party members. Oh, okay. I wish that it had some sort of, you meet these people along the way. They become party members. When you venture out, you get to choose who you take. They don't have to be controllable, but give us some sort of gambit system like Final Fantasy XII had. Give us some some sort of level of customization to them in our party. I'm going to harp on, the next section, when we get into combat and everything, that's going to probably be my biggest, the biggest place I'm going to vent for the most part. It was the source of my most frustration outside the side quests, but just on the topic of characters and then party members. Characters, very well written. Party members, it basically just felt like a joke. It felt like they put that in there. And this is something I'm going to talk about in the next section, but it felt like they used a lot of Final Fantasy branding. But they limited what you were able to do. So that was kind of frustrating, I'm not going to lie. And that's kind of what, I could see where people would have an argument. The Final Fantasy fans is there's all these things in the game, but you don't have access to any of them. They're only in the game because they're allowing other people to use these to say, hey, this is a Final Fantasy game. This is in here. Look, I can cast Protect on somebody. I can cure somebody. But you don't have those abilities. Anyway, I'm going to talk about that more in the next section. But right now, characters, very well written. The party members felt like kind of a joke to me. But it is what it is. And with that, we are going to move on to probably the last thing I'm going to talk about, and my source of frustration, for the most part, of my most irritation, so to speak. And I think this is a lot of things that it's combat. Just come out and say it. The combat, the gameplay in the combat is kind of. Now, I'm not saying the combat's bad for what it is, for what it was. It was very fun, very enjoyable. But does it match up to what a Final Fantasy game's combat should be and should feel like? And I think it's absolutely not. This was by far, I hated the side quests, but the way they executed the combat just irritated me more and more and more as I played through the game. And it starts off with the fact that there's zero elemental effects in the game. Elements don't matter. If you hit something with fire or you hit it with ice, it does the same amount of damage. And there's no status effects in the game, which is frustrating to me as well. And a lot of what I've seen on the internet, what I've heard people say, is a lot of people are complaining that it's not turn-based combat anymore. That's like their big thing. All these Final Fantasy people, they're just mad because it's not turn-based. Final Fantasy hasn't really been turn-based in, the past 15, 20 years. And to me, it's not about turn-based. Final Fantasy has always been a resource management strategy game. You got to manage your stats, you got to manage your resources, and there's always unique ways to take down bosses, find their weakness, and be able to fight them. In Final Fantasy VIII, I know there's specific, you fight undead things, and you can use Cure on them or use a Phoenix Down on them, and they die. It's like that is an option. Final Fantasy X is a good example. Everyone in your party has a specific enemy that they are designed to take down. Waka can take down flying enemies. Lulu is good against elements and flans and different things that are weak versus magic. Yuna's there to cure. Auron is there to deal piercing damage, and then Titus is relatively quick, so he's good for the faster enemies. And then Kamari and Riku, they're just kind of there for the most part. But that is a good game of everyone has a role to play. If you use their roles effectively, it makes combat a lot easier. And that is something that was sorely missed in this game. Whenever you fight the Malboro, or Morble as they call it, in the very beginning of the game, it uses bad breath. And my first instinct was, oh crap, I got to get away, because Malboros are notorious for wrecking you stat-wise, putting all these detrimental effects on you, and then it kind of screws you over. Everyone can be put to sleep, poisoned, confused, blind, and then you eventually die and get a game over. But that wasn't the case with this. It was essentially just, they dealt damage to you, and that just seemed very underwhelming to me. And the next instance that I came into that was kind of eye-opening / frustrating was I fought a bomb. My first time fighting a bomb in the game, I was like, okay, I use fire. My sword is fire. What am I supposed to do to be able to deal damage to this? Because in traditional Final Fantasy games, if you hit a bomb with fire, it heals it. and if you hit the bomb with like water or ice magic of some sort, you can deal extra damage to it and kill it quicker. So it was much of a disappointment to me whenever I found out that I can hit it with fire and it does the same amount of damage as if I hit it with ice. So I think a lot of frustration with fans like myself and like long-time fans of the genre, the series, is that it's not all about turn-based. Go back and look at Final Fantasy VII Remake. They've done a very good job of putting action elements into the game, but maintain that stat management, especially in the New Game Plus. It was all about stat and resource management. But they did a very good job of keeping that. You have materia, you have the lightning, fire, blizzard, yeah. You have all those in there that you can, find weaknesses on your enemies. You have cure, you have all these things, and it has the action elements, but you still have that RPG stat management strategy element to the game. You have bosses that are weak versus fire, so obviously that is what you want to use in that situation. But this game is an action game through and through. There is none of that. All it is stagger them, build up your multiplier as much as possible, and then you deal a lot of damage. Is that fun? Yes. It was fun. I enjoyed it, but it didn't have the core elements of Final Fantasy. I would have loved to see some sort of MP system in the game. I would have loved to see some sort of magic system, or at least status effects. Give me something that added to the difficulty, to the options whenever you're fighting. When it comes down to it, Final Fantasy XVI is essentially just a heavy action story game. There's not a lot of strategy to it. Whenever it comes to the iconic abilities and things, there was a lot of combinations you could do, but they always had the same result. Yeah, you could find something that increased the multiplier quicker and you could deal more damage, but at the end of the day, they all got you to the same place. There wasn't really a unique way of going about it. I would say most people like myself, they kind of found their set of abilities and skills and just rolled with that once they got to a certain point in the game. But I enjoyed the combat. It was good for what it was. But I feel like Final Fantasy XVI is mainly only Final Fantasy with branding. Like I alluded to earlier, there are people that were able to cast Protect and Shell and different Cure and different things that I didn't have the ability to do. I understand the game is designed and rotates around the iconic abilities, but if I'm using Shiva's powers and I'm fighting a bomb and I hit it with ice magic, that should deal more damage than if I hit it with a fire spell, and unfortunately that just wasn't the case. And I feel like that is a big misstep for them in the series. I understand that's not what they were going for, but I think that's what a lot of people, a lot of hardcore Final Fantasy fans, care about. And the whole, turn-based thing, I don't care about turn-based. I care about the strategy aspect. Final thoughts on the game itself. If I was going to give it a rating on an unbiased opinion and just rate it for what it is, which is an action RPG, and not taking Final Fantasy into consideration, I would probably give it about an 8 to an 8.5 out of 10. I do think it was very good. The side quests brought it down significantly, but the story itself did hold it up some. The combat was fun. It just didn't feel Final Fantasy to me. That's basically what it comes down to. I would have been fine with the action elements if they could have put a little bit more of stat management and status effects and elemental effects in the game. So for those reasons, I'd give it an 8, 8.5. I'm probably, let's just say 8. I'm gonna say 8 because the side quests and stuff did bring it down for me. But if I'm gonna rate it on a Final Fantasy scale, it's a 3, and that's easy. It is Final Fantasy only by branding. The only thing, in my opinion, that is Final Fantasy in it is the story and the icons. They've done a very good job with those two things. Everything else, they just threw it out the window. They had things in there to say, hey, look, it's in the game. It's Final Fantasy. I don't like that personally, so, regular rating, 8 out of 10. If I'm going to give it a Final Fantasy rating, it's going to be a solid 3 out of 10 for me. So, obviously, I have my own opinions. Everyone has their opinions. Comment down below. I would love to hear what other people think. I'm not opposed. I'm not gonna bash anybody if they think differently than me. Let's talk about it. I'd love to hear other people's perspectives and how they felt about the game. I know a lot of people loved it. It's just that was the big argument I heard was, traditional Final Fantasy fans are mad because it's not turn-based anymore. No, that's not it. Final Fantasy Remake's amazing. It's not turn-based. It's ATB-based. But it still has some action elements in it while it maintains that RPG feel. But yeah, let me know down below what you think. Let's have a conversation about it. I am going to link my playthrough in the description. Please go check it out. I've also played the Souls games. I've always said if I could build my channel on two things, and that's the Souls-likes and Final Fantasy, that would be absolutely amazing to me because those are the two types of games that I love to play the most. So yeah, I look forward to talking to people in the comments. Give me some feedback on what you think of the video. I really appreciate it. I've been doing YouTube for about a year now, but it's only been Let's Plays, and I'm going to try to branch out a little bit and do some more, little videos like this one. So let me know in the comments if you like it. Also, dropping a like on the video would be absolutely phenomenal. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I appreciate you watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Later.